In a distant corner of the Milky Way galaxy, there existed a powerful organization known as the Galactic Council. For thousands of years, the Council had maintained peace and order among the stars, settling disputes between member species and promoting cooperation for the greater good of all. The Council was composed of representatives from the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy. There were the wise and ancient Illyrians, the technologically brilliant Cypherians, the telepathic Qualla, and many other races that had earned their place through eons of progress and enlightenment. One day, an unexpected visitor arrived at the Council's Grand Space Station headquarters. It was a small delegation from a relatively young species, hailing from a planet called Earth in a remote spiral arm of the galaxy. The humans had only recently achieved faster-than-light travel, but they were eager to take their place among the great civilizations of the stars. The human ambassador, a tall man named Marcus Halstead, stood before the Council and made an impassioned plea for Earth to be admitted as a member. He spoke of his people's achievements in science, art, and philosophy, and their desire to contribute to the greater galactic community. But the Council was not impressed. They had seen countless upstart races over the millennia, many of whom had proven to be more trouble than they were worth. The Illyrian representative, a slender being with shimmering silver skin, was the first to speak. Ambassador Halstead, while we appreciate your enthusiasm, the Council has concerns about the suitability of your species for membership, the Illyrian said, her musical voice echoing through the chamber. Your people have a history of violence and conflict that is troubling to us. The incident logs from your own spacecraft showed numerous examples of aggression and hostility towards other races you have encountered. Marcus bristled at the accusation, but maintained his composure. With respect, Counselor, those were isolated incidents. The individuals responsible have been disciplined according to our laws. We are a young species, yes, but we are learning and growing every day. The Zephyrian delegate, a hulking creature with a mass of tentacles where a human would have a head, spoke next. Your species' rapid technological advancement is also a concern. You have gone from primitive combustion engines to quantum warp drives in a mere few centuries, skipping over several developmental stages that most races take millennia to progress through. Such swift progress can lead to dangerous instability. Other council members murmured their agreement. Marcus could feel the tide turning against him. He made one final appeal. Esteemed counselors, I implore you to give humanity a chance. We have so much to offer, and so much to learn from the great civilizations gathered here. Let us prove ourselves worthy of a place among you. But it was no use. The Quella representative, her voice resonating directly in Marcus's mind, delivered the council's verdict. It is the decision of this council that the human race is not yet ready for the responsibilities and privileges of membership. Your species is still too primitive, too volatile. We cannot in good conscience expose the wider galaxy to the risks you pose. Your application for membership is denied. Marcus was stunned. He had expected resistance, but to be dismissed outright as primitive and dangerous was a blow to his pride and that of his entire species. The other human delegates shared looks of shock and anger. As they returned to their ship in silence, Marcus could barely contain his fury. To be judged and found wanting by a bunch of self-righteous aliens was humiliating. But more than that, he realized it was a wake-up call. If humanity wanted to be taken seriously on the galactic stage, they would have to prove themselves. Marcus turned to his fellow delegates, a fire burning in his eyes. This isn't over, he vowed. We'll show them what humans are made of. We'll become the most powerful race in the galaxy, and we'll do it on our own terms. The Galactic Council will regret the day they dismissed us as primitive savages. And with that, the human delegation departed the Council space station, determined to forge humanity's destiny among the stars, with or without the approval of the mighty Galactic Council. A century passed since the Galactic Council's dismissal of Earth's membership application. On the human homeworld, the Council's insult had not been forgotten. The humiliation had become a driving force, spurring humanity to heights of achievement that would have been unimaginable a few generations before. Earth had transformed into a techno-utopia, its cities gleaming spires of glass and steel that reached towards the heavens. Advances in science and engineering had solved many of the problems that had plagued humanity for millennia. Hunger, disease, and poverty were now distant memories. But the greatest strides have been made in the realm of space exploration and conquest. The best minds of Earth had come together to build a fleet of starships that were the envy of the galaxy. Powered by advanced fusion drives and shielded by impenetrable force fields, these vessels could traverse the vast distances between stars in mere weeks. The first human colonies were established on the moons of Jupiter and Saturn, followed by outposts on the rocky planets of nearby star systems. Within a few decades, humanity had spread like wildfire across the galaxy, claiming hundreds of worlds as their own. At the center of this expansion was the Earth Defense Force, EDF, a powerful military organization that had grown from the combined armed forces of the old Earth nations. The EDF's ranks were filled with the best and brightest soldiers, pilots, and tacticians that humanity had to offer, all united in their determination to secure Earth's place among the stars. The EDF's flagship was a massive dreadnought called the Terran Fury, a sleek behemoth bristling with advanced weaponry. Its captain was a grizzled veteran named Admiral Elena Sarajevo, a woman who had earned her stars through countless battles against pirates, alien raiders, and other threats to human interests. As Earth's power and influence grew, the Galactic Council took notice. They observed humanity's rapid expansion with a mixture of awe and unease. Some council members argued that the humans should be brought into the fold before their unchecked growth destabilized the delicate balance of power in the galaxy. But others, led by the Illyrian and Zephyrian delegates, maintained their opposition to human membership. They pointed to the EDF's aggressive stance and the human colony's rapid resource extraction as evidence that humanity was still too volatile and unpredictable to be trusted. In the end, the Council decided to take a wait-and-see approach. They would monitor humanity's progress, but would not interfere unless the humans posed a direct threat to the established galactic order. On Earth, news of the Council's continued disdain only served to fuel the fire of human ambition. In the halls of power, leaders spoke openly of the day when Earth would eclipse the Council as the dominant force in the galaxy. In the shipyards of Mars and Titan, construction of new and even more powerful warships accelerated. The EDF's ranks swelled as more and more young men and women volunteered to serve in humanity's grand cosmic destiny. And in the research labs of Earth's greatest universities, scientists and engineers worked feverishly to unlock the secrets of advanced propulsion, quantum computing, and directed energy weapons, technologies that would give humanity a decisive edge over any foe. As the decades passed, humanity's star continued to rise, and the dream of galactic dominance seemed within reach. But in the shadows, old grudges and resentments festered. Many humans still remembered the sting of the Council's rejection, and they longed for the day when they could make the arrogant aliens pay for their disrespect. Little did they know that their chance for revenge would come sooner than anyone could have imagined, in the form of a terrifying alien threat that would shake the very foundations of galactic civilization. And in that crucible of fire and blood, humanity would finally show the galaxy what it was truly capable of. The Galactic Council was in session when the first reports came in. The previously unknown alien race, calling themselves the Xeno, had launched a massive surprise attack on the outer colonies of several Council member species. The reports were fragmented and panicked, speaking of vast fleets of black ships that seemed to appear out of nowhere, raining death and destruction upon defenseless worlds. The council chamber erupted into chaos as delegates shouted for action and recrimination. The Illyrian representative called for calm, insisting that the council's combined fleets could easily handle this upstart threat. The Zephyrian delegate demanded an immediate counterattack, vowing to crush the Xeno beneath the might of the council's advanced weaponry. Amidst the clamor, A junior aide rushed into the chamber and whispered urgently into the Ilarian delegate's ear. The silver-skinned alien's face turned ashen as she listened. She then turned to address her fellow council members, her voice trembling. "I have just received word that the Xeno have attacked Earth," she said, her words cutting through the din like a laser. "Several of their largest cities have been destroyed, and millions of humans are reported dead." A stunned silence fell over the chamber. For all their grievances with humanity, the council had never wished such devastation upon them. The koala delegate was the first to speak, her telepathic voice heavy with sorrow. "This is a tragedy beyond measure," she said. "We must put aside our differences and aid the humans in their hour of need." But the Zephyrian representative disagreed. "The humans are not our concern," he rumbled, his tentacles writhing in agitation. "They have always stood apart from the council, and they must face this threat on their own. Our priority must be the defense of our own member worlds." The debate raged on, but in the end, the council could not reach a consensus. Some members favored sending aid to Earth, while others insisted on focusing on the defense of their own territories. In the absence of a clear decision, the default protocol was to observe and gather more information before committing to a course of action. On Earth, the situation was dire. The Xeno ships had appeared in orbit without warning, their advanced cloaking technology allowing them to bypass the EDF's early warning systems. The alien vessels had immediately begun bombarding major population centers, reducing great cities to rubble in a matter of minutes. The EDF had scrambled its forces to respond, but the Xeno's technology was far beyond anything they had encountered before. The alien ships were protected by energy shields that shrugged off even the most powerful human weapons, while their own directed energy beams sliced through EDF ships like a hot knife through butter. In the chaos of the initial assault, Admiral Cervejo had managed to rally a portion of the EDF fleet and mount a desperate counterattack. The Terran Fury led the charge, its guns blazing as it plowed through the Xeno formation. For a moment, it seemed like the tide might turn. The human ships fought with a ferocity born of desperation, their crews knowing that they were the only thing standing between their homeworld and annihilation. But the Xeno were simply too strong. Their ships outnumbered the EDF vessels 3-1, and their technology was too advanced. One by one, the human ships were overwhelmed and destroyed, until only the Terran Fury remained. Admiral Cervejo knew that her ship could not win this battle, but she also knew that she could not let the Xeno have Earth without a fight. With a heavy heart, she gave the order to ram the nearest Xeno dreadnought, hoping to take as many of the invaders with her into oblivion. As the Terran Fury plowed into the alien ship in a blinding flash of light, the remnants of the EDF fleet scattered and fled, leaving Earth to its fate. In the following days, the Xeno completed their conquest of the human homeworld, their ground troops swarming over the planet like a plague of locusts. From their vantage point on the galactic stage, the other races of the Council watched the fall of Earth with a mixture of horror and grim fascination. Some felt a twinge of sympathy for the humans, while others saw it as a fitting end for a species that had always been more trouble than they were worth. But all of them knew that the galaxy had just become a much more dangerous place, and that the Xeno threat would not stop at Earth. The war for survival had just begun, and no one knew who would be left standing when the dust finally settled. In the weeks following the Xeno invasion, the situation on Earth was grim. The alien forces had established control over most of the planet's surface, enslaving or exterminating anyone who stood in their way. The remnants of the EDF had retreated to hidden bases scattered across the solar system, licking their wounds and planning their next move. But even in the darkest of times, humanity's indomitable spirit refused to be extinguished. In the ruins of their conquered cities, pockets of resistance emerged, led by brave men and women who refused to submit to alien rule. They scavenged weapons and supplies from the wreckage of EDF armories, and they used guerrilla tactics to strike at the Xeno occupiers whenever and wherever they could. One such resistance cell was led by Captain James Wakefield, a grizzled EDF Marine who had survived the fall of Earth by sheer tenacity and skill. Wakefield and his team had taken refuge in the mountains of Colorado, using the rugged terrain to their advantage as they launched daring raids against Xeno supply lines and communications hubs. Wakefield knew that the resistance could not hope to defeat the Xeno through conventional means. The aliens' technology was simply too advanced, and their numbers too great. But he also knew that every small victory against the invaders bought precious time for the scattered remnants of humanity to regroup and plan their counterattack. Meanwhile, in the depths of space, the EDF was preparing for its most audacious mission yet. Admiral Nicholas Petrov, the new commander of the human fleet, had devised a plan to strike at the heart of the Xeno war machine. Their massive factory ships that churned out new weapons and soldiers at a terrifying rate. Petrov's plan was risky in the extreme. It called for a small team of elite EDF commandos to infiltrate one of the factory ships and sabotage its main reactor core, setting off a chain reaction that would destroy the entire vessel. The catch was that the team would have to do so while the ship was in hyperspace, where the Xeno's defenses were at their weakest. The mission was a success, but at a terrible cost. Only a handful of the commandos survived the blast, and they were picked up by Petrov's waiting fleet. But the destruction of the factory ship dealt a heavy blow to the Xeno war effort, slowing their advance and giving humanity a fighting chance. Emboldened by this victory, the EDF launched a series of daring counterattacks against Xeno-held worlds, using hit-and-run tactics to keep the aliens off balance. At the same time, Wakefield and his resistance fighters stepped up their attacks on Earth, sabotaging Xeno infrastructure and freeing human prisoners whenever they could. The tide of the war began to turn, slowly but surely. The Xeno, unused to facing such fierce and determined resistance, began to make mistakes. They overextended their supply lines, leaving their rear echelons vulnerable to attack. They underestimated the resolve of the human defenders, who fought with a savage fury that the aliens could not match. In one pivotal battle, Admiral Petrov lured a large portion of the Xeno fleet into a trap near the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter. The human ships, using the asteroids for cover, managed to flank the alien vessels and destroy them with a barrage of nuclear missiles. The victory was costly, but it broke the back of the Xeno invasion force. On Earth, Wakefield and his resistance fighters launched a final desperate assault on the Xeno command center in the ruins of Washington, D.C. The battle was fierce and bloody, but in the end, the humans emerged victorious. The Xeno commander was captured, and the remaining alien troops were forced to surrender. The war was over, but at a terrible price. Earth lay in ruins, its once great cities reduced to rubble and ash. Billions had died, and countless more were left homeless and traumatized. The EDF had been decimated, its ranks thinned by years of brutal fighting. But humanity had survived, and more than that, it had triumphed against impossible odds. The Xeno, once thought to be invincible, had been beaten back, their dreams of conquest shattered, and in the aftermath of the war, a new sense of unity and purpose emerged among the human survivors. They had endured the crucible of the Xeno invasion, and they had emerged stronger and more determined than ever. They would rebuild, and they would remember, and they would make sure that no alien power would ever threaten humanity again. In the aftermath of the Xeno War, the Galactic Council convened an emergency session to discuss the future of the galaxy. The Illyrian and Zephyrian delegates, once the most vocal opponents of human membership, now found themselves in a difficult position. The humans had proven themselves to be a force to be reckoned with, having defeated the Xeno against all odds. Some members of the council argued that humanity had earned its place among the great powers of the galaxy, and that it was time to extend the offer of membership once again. They pointed to the sacrifices made by the EDF and the resilience shown by the human resistance as proof that Earth deserved a seat at the table. But others, led by the Illyrian and Zephyrian delegates, saw an opportunity to consolidate their own power and influence. They argued that humanity was still too unpredictable, too prone to violence and aggression. They pointed to the destruction wrought by the Xeno War as evidence that Earth was a liability, not an asset. In secret, the Illyrian and Zephyrian delegates made a pact with the remnants of the Xeno forces. In exchange for advanced technology and a share of the spoils, the council members agreed to help the Xeno subjugate Earth and its colonies once and for all. They believed that by controlling humanity, they could prevent any future threats to their own dominance. The betrayal came suddenly and without warning. As the EDF fleet was still licking its wounds from the Xeno War, a massive armada of council ships appeared in Earth's skies. The Illyrian and Zephyrian delegates issued an ultimatum. Humanity was to surrender unconditionally and submit to council rule or face annihilation. Admiral Petrov, still in command of the EDF, was furious. He had fought and bled alongside his fellow humans to defend Earth from the Xeno, only to be stabbed in the back by the very allies he had hoped to join. He vowed to fight to the last, even if it meant the destruction of the human race. But Earth's leaders knew that resistance was futile. The Council's fleet was far larger and more advanced than anything the EDF could muster, and humanity was still reeling from the losses of the Xeno War. With heavy hearts, they agreed to the Council's terms, hoping to buy time and save what was left of their people. In the years that followed, Earth and its colonies were placed under the direct control of the Council. Human autonomy was stripped away, and any signs of resistance were met with swift and brutal reprisals. The once proud EDF was disbanded, its ships and weapons confiscated or destroyed. But even as humanity chafed under the yoke of alien oppression, a new resolve was growing. In secret meetings and hidden bases, the remnants of the EDF and the resistance began to plan and prepare. They stockpiled weapons and supplies, and they reached out to sympathetic factions within the council races, seeking allies in the coming fight. Leading this clandestine resistance was none other than James Wakefield, the hero of the Xeno War. Wakefield had been presumed dead in the final battle for Earth, but he had survived, though badly wounded. In the years since, he had been quietly gathering followers and resources, biding his time until the moment was right to strike back against the Council. As the Council's grip on power grew ever tighter, Wakefield knew that the time for action was fast approaching. He had seen firsthand the depths of alien treachery, and he knew that humanity could never be truly free as long as the Council remained in control. In hidden factories and shipyards across the solar system, Wakefield and his followers began to build a new fleet, one that would be a match for anything the Council could throw at them. They reverse-engineered captured alien technology, and they developed new weapons and tactics specifically designed to counter the Council's strengths. And all the while, they planned and plotted, waiting for the perfect moment to launch their rebellion. They knew that the odds were stacked against them, that they were facing an enemy that had dominated the galaxy for centuries. But they also knew that they had something the Council could never understand: the unbreakable spirit of humanity, the will to fight and die for the right to chart their own destiny among the stars. And with that knowledge, they prepared to embark on the greatest and most terrible struggle in human history. The day of the rebellion began like any other, with the Galactic Council's overseers going about their business of exploiting Earth's resources and suppressing any signs of dissent. But beneath the surface, the human resistance was ready to strike. At a prearranged signal, resistance cells across the planet launched a coordinated attack on key Council installations. Power plants, communication hubs, and transportation networks were targeted, plunging Earth into chaos. At the same time, a fleet of human ships, cobbled together from salvaged EDF vessels and stolen Council technology, emerged from hidden bases on the Moon and in the asteroid belt. Leading the charge was James Wakefield, his once youthful face now lined with the scars of battle and the weight of responsibility. He had spent years planning this moment, carefully cultivating alliances and gathering resources. Now, as he stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Phoenix, he felt a sense of grim satisfaction. The time for hiding was over. The time for revenge had come. The Council forces, caught off guard by the sudden and ferocious assault, scrambled to respond. But they soon found themselves facing an enemy unlike any they had encountered before. The human ships, though inferior in number and technology, fought with a savage fury that caught the Council off guard. They used unconventional tactics, such as ramming and suicide attacks, that the Council's staid military doctrines were ill-equipped to handle. On the ground, the resistance fighters were equally ruthless. They targeted Council officials and collaborators with sniper attacks and bombings, sowing fear and confusion among the ranks of their oppressors. They fought street by street, building by building, using the urban terrain to their advantage, and making the Council pay for every inch of ground. As the battle raged on, reports began to filter in from other colonies and Council worlds. Inspired by Earth's example, human uprisings were breaking out across the galaxy, throwing the carefully maintained order of the Council into disarray. Ships and soldiers that had been tasked with keeping Earth under control were suddenly recalled to put down rebellions on a dozen different fronts. Seizing the opportunity, Wakefield pressed the attack. The Phoenix and its escorts, now joined by a ragtag fleet of human ships from across the solar system, launched a daring assault on the Council's main command center in orbit around Earth. The battle was fierce and bloody, with both sides taking heavy losses. But in the end, the human fleet broke through the Council's defenses and boarded the massive station. As Wakefield and his Marines fought their way through the corridors of the station, they were met with a sight that stopped them in their tracks. The Illyrian and Zephyrian delegates, the masterminds behind the betrayal of Earth, were cowering in their chambers, pleading for mercy. They had never expected the humans to be able to mount such a fierce and effective resistance. Wakefield's eyes blazed with fury as he confronted the delegates. These were the beings who had sold out humanity to the Xeno, who had condemned billions to slavery and oppression. In that moment, he wanted nothing more than to put a bullet in their heads and be done with it. But as he looked around at his fellow Marines, he saw in their eyes a weariness, a desire for something more than just bloodshed and revenge. They had fought so hard and so long, not just for vengeance, but for a chance to build a better future, a future free from the cycle of violence and oppression that had plagued the galaxy for so long. And so, with a heavy heart, Wakefield lowered his weapon. He would not stoop to the level of his enemies. He would not become the very thing he had fought against for so long. Instead, he offered the delegates a choice: surrender and face trial for their crimes, or be destroyed along with their precious Council. In the end, the delegates chose surrender, and with their capitulation, the Galactic Council crumbled. The fleet Wakefield had assembled broadcast the news across the galaxy, declaring Earth's victory and calling on all human colonies to rise up and join the new order. There was still much work to be done, much rebuilding and healing to be undertaken. But for the first time in generations, humanity was free. Free to chart its own course, to explore the stars on its own terms. And as Wakefield looked out at the celebrating crowds in the streets of Earth's cities, he knew that, whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, as one united human race. In the wake of Earth's stunning victory over the Galactic Council, the once mighty alien government found itself in a state of crisis. The news of the Illyrian and Zephyrian delegates' surrender had spread like wildfire, sparking unrest and rebellion on dozens of Council-controlled worlds. As the reports of uprisings and defections poured in, the remaining Council members gathered for an emergency session on their capital world of Zephyrus Prime. The atmosphere in the Grand Council chamber was one of fear and desperation, as the assembled delegates grappled with the realization that their centuries-old grip on power was slipping away. "This is an outrage," bellowed the Zephyrian Prime Minister, his tentacles quivering with rage. "The humans have no right to dictate terms to us. We must crush this rebellion and make an example of Earth and its upstart leaders." But others in the chamber were not so sure. They had seen the footage of the battle over Earth, had witnessed the ferocity and determination of the human fighters. They knew that to continue the war would be to invite their own destruction. "We must seek a diplomatic solution," argued the Illyrian chancellor, her silver skin flushed with emotion. "The humans have proven themselves to be a formidable foe. To continue to fight them would be foolish and wasteful." The debate raged on for hours, with each side presenting increasingly desperate arguments. But in the end, no consensus could be reached. The council was too divided, too fractured by internal rivalries and conflicting agendas. It was then, at the height of the chaos, that a fleet of human ships appeared in the skies over Zephyrus Prime. Led by James Wakefield aboard the Phoenix, the fleet had made the long journey from Earth, determined to bring the fight to the Council's doorstep. As the human ships took up positions around the planet, Wakefield broadcast a message to the Council chamber. His face, scared and stern, filled the view screens of the assembled delegates. "People of the Galactic Council," he began, his voice steady and clear. "For too long, you have ruled the galaxy through fear and oppression. You have sought to crush the spirit of humanity, to bend us to your will, but no more." He paused, letting his words sink in. The chamber was silent, the delegates transfixed by the power of his presence. "We come to you now, not as conquerors, but as liberators. We offer you a choice. Surrender and join us in building a new galactic order, one based on freedom, equality, and mutual respect, or continue to fight and face the consequences of your actions." For a long moment, there was silence. Then, one by one, the delegates began to rise from their seats. Some raised their hands in a gesture of surrender. Others simply bowed their heads, acknowledging the inevitability of their defeat. In the end, only a handful of die-hard loyalists remained, led by the Zephyrian Prime Minister. They were quickly overwhelmed by human troops, who stormed the council chamber and placed them under arrest. As Wakefield and his soldiers took control of the council complex, they were greeted by crowds of cheering aliens, many of whom had long chafed under the council's rule. The sight of humans and aliens standing together, united in their desire for a better future, was a powerful one. In the days and weeks that followed, a new government was formed, one that included representatives from all the major galactic races. Earth, as the birthplace of the rebellion, was given a prominent seat at the table, with Wakefield himself serving as one of humanity's chief diplomats. There were still challenges ahead, of course. The scars of centuries of oppression and mistrust could not be healed overnight. But as Wakefield looked out over the cheering crowds, he knew that they had taken an important first step. And he knew, too, that humanity would never again allow itself to be subjugated or oppressed. They had fought too hard, sacrificed too much, to ever surrender their freedom again. They would stand tall among the stars, a shining example of what could be accomplished when individuals work together for a common cause. The Galactic Council was dead, but in its place, a new order was rising. And at the center of it all, leading the way forward, was a united and determined human race, ready to face whatever challenges the future might bring. A decade had passed since the fall of the Galactic Council and the establishment of the new galactic order. In that time, humanity had risen to become one of the most influential and respected species in the galaxy, thanks in no small part to the efforts of leaders like James Wakefield. Under Wakefield's guidance, Earth had become a hub of trade, diplomacy, and cultural exchange. The planet's cities, once reduced to rubble by the Xeno invasion and the Council's oppression, had been rebuilt and expanded, now gleaming with the latest in alien technology and human ingenuity. The former colonies of Earth had also thrived in this new era of freedom and prosperity. From the icy moons of Jupiter to the far-flung outposts on the edge of the galactic rim, humans had spread out across the stars, establishing new communities and forging new alliances with their alien neighbors. But not all was well in this brave new galaxy. There were still those who resented humanity's newfound power and influence, who saw Earth as an upstart and a threat to the established order. Chief among these were the remnants of the old Galactic Council races, the Illyrians and Zephyrians in particular. Though their governments had been dismantled and their leaders imprisoned or exiled, These races still clung to their ancient grudges and resentments. In secret, they plotted and schemed, looking for ways to undermine humanity's position and reclaim their lost status. Their opportunity came in the form of a distant alien race known as the Krell. The Krell were a warlike and expansionist species known for their advanced technology and their ruthless conquest of weaker civilizations. For years, they had been steadily encroaching on the borders of the new galactic order, testing its defenses and probing for weaknesses. Now, with the covert aid of Illyrian and Zephyrian agents, the Krell launched a massive invasion of human space. Their ships, armed with weapons of unimaginable destructive power, swept through the outer colonies like a plague, leaving devastation and despair in their wake. On Earth, news of the invasion was met with shock and horror. But there was also a grim determination, a resolve to fight back against this new threat with all the strength and courage that humanity could muster. Once again, James Wakefield found himself at the forefront of the battle, leading a coalition of human and alien forces against the Krell onslaught. The fighting was brutal and bloody, with losses on both sides mounting by the day. But even in the darkest moments of the war, Wakefield never lost hope. He knew that humanity had faced worse odds before, and had always emerged stronger and more united for the struggle. And he knew, too, that they were not alone in this fight. All across the galaxy, other species rallied to humanity's cause. The Koala sent their most powerful telepaths to aid in the war effort, while the Zephyrians, in a stunning turn of events, pledged their advanced technology and resources to the human-led coalition. In the end, it was this unity, this sense of common purpose, that turned the tide of the war. In a series of daring raids and bold offensives, Wakefield and his allies struck deep into Krell territory, destroying their shipyards and cutting off their supply lines. The final battle took place in the skies above the Krell homeworld itself. For 3 days and nights, the opposing fleets clashed in a maelstrom of fire and debris, with neither side giving quarter or asking for mercy. But in the end, the human-led coalition emerged victorious. The Krell, their armies shattered and their cities in ruins, had no choice but to surrender. And with their defeat, the last great threat to galactic peace was vanquished. In the aftermath of the war, a new era of unity and cooperation dawned. The old grudges and rivalries that had once divided the galaxy were set aside, replaced by a shared commitment to building a better future for all species. And at the center of it all stood humanity, the once despised and marginalized race that had now become the guardians and leaders of the galactic community. It was a role that they had not sought, but one that they had earned through their courage, their sacrifice, and their unwavering belief in the power of unity and hope. As James Wakefield stood before the cheering crowds on Earth, his hair now gray, and his face lined with the weight of years, he knew that the journey was far from over. There would always be new challenges to face, new threats to confront. But he also knew that humanity would never again stand alone. They had forged unbreakable bonds of friendship and alliance with the other races of the galaxy, bonds that would endure for generations to come. And with that knowledge, he looked to the stars, to the infinite possibilities that awaited them all, and smiled. The future was bright, and it belonged to them all.